Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the newest issue ones that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content and you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, consider hitting that subscribe button. So, guys, if you would like to become a member of my YouTube channel, super easy to do. Just go on to the main page, hit that join button. There is 3 different tiers of memberships to join, and as low as 99 cents will get you early access to videos. You'll get stickers on your comments. You'll also get monthly membership badges to just let others know how long you've been a member for. And you never know, there could be contests, there could be anything. So it does help support the channel. It's much appreciated, whether you do or you don't. I always love when you guys watch and comment anyway. So with that being said, let's get started. Okay, just a side note, there weren't that many new number ones that I picked up this week. So we're going to be reviewing a few issue 2s to see if the series is still worthy of picking up. And then we're going to talk about, of course, the Amazing Spider-Man this particular week. So the first book we're going to talk about today, though, is Creepshow. This is issue 1. This is another volume of this story, and I picked this up because Chip Zdarsky was attached to the first story of this, so I was like, all right, let me see what he has to offer in the horror side of things, right? And here's what you can expect from the artwork in Chip Zdarsky's story. It's fine. It doesn't like break any barriers or anything. There is definitely a little bit of like serial killing or murdering going on in that book, but it wasn't anything where I was like, oh man, I was blown away. There is some psychedelic stuff that goes on, so I'll talk about that later. And then the other story, we got this one going on over here, which I actually tried reading it, and again, when it comes to the lettering that's so tiny, to the point where they try to pack in the story in small lettering, it's a complete turnoff for me. The artwork is pretty interesting too, but I did try reading it. I just could not get into this particular story. But let's talk about the Chip Zdarsky story. So when it comes to this one, there was this woman whose daughter has gone missing. She's 18 years old, and she's an adult, and she can kind of do what she wants to do, but she's gone missing, and the mom is kind of like, has got a stick up her butt, basically, and she decided to go after her herself since the police won't help her. And we find out that she joins this cult, right? And we find out that the cult leader is this woman's old coworker, and he's gone on this mission of expanding his mind because he found mushrooms and he's tripping balls, and he feels like he can save the world, and he feels like that if he gives the coworker these mushrooms that she can be released and free her mind. Well, something horrific happens when she takes these mushrooms, right? And you see what happens at the very end of the particular story, and I was like, all right, that's kind of cool, but it wasn't anything great. And like I said, when it came to that second story, I couldn't get into it with the small lettering, and just not for me. And then also, when I think about it, when it comes to horror anthology stories, I've read quite a few of them, and if I'm going to read one, I think it's going to be from the Ghost Machine imprint. So this book for me is going to be not worthy. That's right, guys. Ghost Machine is where it's at. I want to read Hyde Street. I read that preview story, and it seemed a little bit more scary. It seemed like a little bit more intense, and I think that's what I'm going for here. So, not anything against Creepshow. I've watched a lot of Creepshow stuff in the past, but it's just something that I think I'm going to lean towards that one instead. So if I had to grade this one, I thought the first story was okay, but the second story for me wasn't really readable, so I'm just going to put this right in the middle. I'm going to give this one a C. Guys, let me know what you thought of Creepshow if you read it. Turtles of Grayskull. This is issue 1, published by Dark Horse Comics. This one is 32 pages for the price of $4. This one's written by Tim Seeley, and the art is done by Freddie E. Williams II. The artwork is pretty cool. It's not bad. I felt like even the turtles in this book are really super buff. They're almost more like the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe characters in here. And the book really does try to showcase a little bit of everything. But I think that actually hurts the book, in my opinion. I feel like when I first started reading this, it definitely jumped around all over the place. And I was like, whoa, where are we going with this comic book? Like, they're trying to do too much too soon. Like, look at this opening page. They're trying to catch you up with everything that's going on. And basically, it's just like, the Turtles have, made this relationship with like Man-at-Arms, and you had like Shredder make a deal with Skeletor, and then they wind up going to the Eternia, and they wind up battling each other, and then there's this whole relationship thing with Splinter and the Turtles, where it's just like, should I have made them into warriors and not enjoy their teenage lives? And there was just a lot of things going on in this book. And then it's just like 1 second they're battling all the evil characters of Masters of the Universe just to get transported somewhere else, because it is very much like a time travel story and dealing with all these different universes. And they end up in the Triceraton world, right, where you wind up getting to see the arena and then possibly fighting and stuff like that. And when I got to the very end of this comic book, I was like, that's kind of cool. Like, I like the very end of it, because I was like, oh, that's a cool cliffhanger. Will it jump around so much in the other issues? I don't know. So I don't know if this is worthy of me for picking up. So what I'm going to say is, I think it's probably going to be worthy for you guys. So it's worthy for you. If you're a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fan, if you're a He-Man fan, and you're a ride or die when it comes to these IPs, this might be something that you're going to want to continue no matter what. So for me, being that I do read so many books, and I wasn't blown away by this first issue just because of all the jumping around and time traveling and all that stuff, I'm probably not going to continue it. It's just, again, there's a lot of comic books coming out. I can't read everything, and I got to make the tough call here. So if I had to grade this book, though, for me, I'm probably going to give this one a C+. I just didn't like the introduction to it. It just bogged me down. I was like, oh my God, where are we going with all this? But by the time it got to the end of it, there was a decent cliffhanger. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. So we're going to talk about a few number 2s now, and this one is Nightclub 2. This is issue 2, 28 pages for the price of $5, written by Mark Miller, and the art is done by Juanan Ramirez. The artwork is pretty good in this comic book. There's definitely some cool action scenes. I wouldn't say there's a lot in this book. Facial expressions are cool. There is definitely some action going on in the form of, girl on boy action in this comic, which I totally did not expect. Facial expressions really cool. The good thing that goes on in this comic book is just, I love the transformations when you get to see them transform from vampire to bat. Really great stuff. Now, if you read the last volume of this, you know that this was a trio of 18-year-old vampire kids that wanted to be famous. They were nerds, right? And they got these abilities, and they wound up going on YouTube, then they wind up doing superhero stuff. But things took a turn for the worse for the group, as the main character by the name of Sam fell in love with the female vampire by the name of Amy, right? And she's not into Sam. She's into the other guy, I think, which is his name is Danny. And he kind of really explains his feelings in this comic book once again. And she says, listen, I'm just not that into you, right? And so what Sam does is he falls for, instead of Amy, he goes to the next best thing, which is the hottest girl in school. and she's the hot cheerleader, and her name is Kendra, and they're banging all the time. It's like, 14 times, I think he explained, and he's like, but who's counting? Like, he acts like he's the badass, which he kind of is, because again, he was once the nerd, and now he's the most popular kid in school, right? But this girl has an angle on him. Like, she's trying to wrap him around her little pinky, and then what happens is she's just trying to get more and more information, and then eventually he tells her the secret of what he is. Whether that is a good thing or a bad thing, you're gonna have to wait and see. But this is classic, man. This is just like sometimes when you're a young boy and you get that first hit, right? You get that girl. You're just like, I'm gonna be with her forever. I love her. I'll tell her everything, and it's a classic tale, right? So yeah, this book is worthy, guys. Definitely worthy. This solidifies the little twist that happened in this series. I thought it was going to be completely predictable, and it wasn't. So I'm on board with this one. I'm going to give this one an A. Let me know in the comment section below if you're reading this. If you're not, please read it. I think it's really good, and I suggest read the first trade of this so you get a full understanding of everything. Wolverine Revenge Red Band Edition Issue 2. 28 pages for the price of $6. This one's written by Jonathan Hickman, and the art is done by Greg Capullo. The artwork looks good. I think the artwork in this one is better than in the first issue, right? Here we get to see Wolverine with Danny Moonstar. We wanted to see Demon Bear. We wanted getting to see Forge in this comic book. The characters all looked really good, right? There's even a scene with like Wolverine in a Magneto helmet, which is really well drawn, and it's just much more apparent why this book is called Wolverine Revenge. It just really is, because you can't go that much into it at this point, right? If you're thinking of a really in-depth story, I don't think it's going to happen here, right? I mean, obviously, you got the story of what happened. Magneto died. There was an EMP. Most of the world died. There's only a few million people left. And they tried saving the people, and basically, they failed. That's what happens in the comic. Nick Fury's like, I give up. He's like, I'm the only one left. I'm going to drink. I'm going to die. And then kind of like Wolverine goes into his own hands, and he has to make the decision. Am I just going to wander the earth and do whatever? Or am I going to get my revenge? And so what he does is he seeks out people that can still help him. So he seeks out Forge, and him and Forge go out onto this mission, and they try to recover Magneto's helmet, and basically he is on the hunt now for all the different characters that you saw in issue 1 that caused him pain and grief and killed his friends and things like that. And then at the end of this comic, you wind up getting to see a pretty kick-ass battle between Wolverine and Sabretooth. Okay? So with that being said, this book is worthy. Shut your brain off. Have fun with this comic book. Enjoy the artwork. I think that that is what this book is for, right? The only issue that I have with this comic book is that it's freaking Sabretooth again. It's always Sabretooth. And with all the Wolverine books that have come out this year, he's always fought Sabretooth. So I'm so over that battle. I'm fine with him going after Deadpool, which we'll eventually get to, and Omega Red, and some of the other characters in here, but god dang, why do you have to be Sabretooth so soon, right? But the battle at hand is really a lot of fun. The dialogue with them fighting is cool, and so with that being said, I'm going to give this one a solid B. It's not a really in-depth story, so if you're expecting that, you're going to be disappointed. If you're expecting a different fight in this issue besides Sabretooth, you're going to be disappointed in that. So, however, though, the artwork is absolutely beautiful, and I wish Capullo could do the ongoing series when it came to Wolverine. So one more book to talk about before we dive back into the new issue ones. And don't worry, there'll be plenty of books to talk about on Monday for After the Pull. That's the video series where I talk about the rest of the comic books I read for the current comic book week. So this issue, we're talking about The Amazing Spider-Man. This is issue 58. The beginning of the end, one of the biggest fights of all time when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man comics. I think that's what it's kind of advertised, right? So this one's written by Zeb Wells. Obviously, the art is done by John Romita Jr. And you got your cast of characters in here like Beetle and Spider-Man and Tombstone. But for the most part, we just get to see those three characters in this comic book. And this really is just basically a huge fight chase scene. The one thing that this book does have is that it has a lot of tension, because when I was reading this, I was like hoping that Janice would kill Tombstone, or Tombstone would kill Janice, or somebody would do fucking something, but it doesn't happen. It's just it's this one big scene after another, right? And you get John Romita Jr.'s, for the most part, close up, big panel art, because let's just face it, there's not much story left, and they're trying to drag it out as much as they can. This is a good page. I actually really like this page right here. You know, if the artwork constantly looked like that, I was like, okay, that's pretty good. But you get to see this fight between these three characters, and just when you think, oh man, Janice is gonna die, like, she doesn't die. Like, she literally falls outside a window onto a couple trash cans and lands on her neck, right? And she just gets up and runs away. So she must be full of adrenaline to be running away from her father like that. There's also one scene in here where she literally like rips Tombstone's eyeballs out from his head almost, right? Like in this scene right here. And you're like, man, is she that strong to where she can do that? Like, I get that she's wearing like these gauntlets and beetle gloves to maybe, but doesn't he have like kind of like a stoned face, right? So she must have been really pissed off there. There isn't really much story here. It's a one big action comic, to the point to where it literally to the very last page sits there. You want to get crazy? Then the next cover is like, let's get crazy. So it continues from the next cover being, you know, I guess, what's the word am I looking for? Creative? I don't know. Is this book worthy? Yeah, sure, why not? It's worthy. Just because if you've read Amazing Spider-Man this entire time, you're going to want to see how this ends. It does create tension. It does create emotion. However, I found myself wanting something bad to happen to one of these characters, to the point then we get the ramification in the next issue. But instead, we're going to drag it out another issue to see what happens. So, if I had to grade this one, it's a C+. I've read worse. That's not saying much. Knights vs. Samurai. This is issue 1. This book is 24 pages, $3. I mean, you can't help the price point for this comic book, right? Written by David, I'm not going there, and the art is done by Federico Melee. The artwork in this comic book may not be the best. It has an acquired taste, I think, or it might take a little while to get used to. I can only imagine like what this book would look like with a really top tier artist on it. I think it could look absolutely spectacular. So I was a little taken off by the art, and I'm like, well, hopefully the story definitely overshadows that art. Now, the coloring in the book is really good. I think it fits the vibe of the comic book, and I was really intrigued by this because I was like, Knights versus Samurai. I'm like, what is that about, right? So in this comic, we learn about the knighthood of Sir Charles. Now, he had a brother, and these two worked together on slaying dragons. Well, his brother wound up getting killed, and this next character by the name of Charles, the other brother, he wound up up getting into knighthood, and he's called the Dragon Butcher, and he's been selected to go out onto this mission to defeat these monsters in this particular island, right? And you wind up getting to see the whole setup take place. You wind up getting to see the world. You get to see the different characters involved, and him accepting this mission and get accepted to knighthood, and meeting the wife, and how he's going to build a house and a family when he comes back. You get to see the send-off. So all that stuff is a whole setup of what's things to come. You get to see them on the ship and, you know, sailing the seas and fighting a big octopus monster. But nowhere in this whole entire comic book is there a freaking single samurai to actually be seen, except to the very end. And there you're kind of like, all right, now this is where the story is going to take shape. So for me, excuse me, this book is worthy. Listen, I know it's a little bit of a drag, a little bit of a setup, but for $2.99, I definitely thought it was worth it, and definitely worthy of checking out the issue 2, because I want to see how brutal this is and why these samurais here and what's their MO, and I just want to see the whole outcome of this comic book. So it wasn't a perfect book, but I do like how they did take the time on introducing the main character of Sir Charles, the history with his brother and all that other stuff. So at the end of the day, I'm going to give this one a B-. I'll be definitely checking out the second issue for sure. Let me know in the comments below what you thought. So the next book we're talking about is Batman The Long Halloween, the last Halloween, issue 1. Decided to read this one digitally. I was afraid to pick it up because I was going to be lost. But after reading this first issue, I wasn't lost at all. This book is 32 pages for the price of $5. Written by Jeb Loeb, and the art is done by Eduardo Rizzo. I'll have to go back and read the original, but when it came to this book, I think it did a really nice job at kind of giving you a little bit of a recap of what the last Halloween, or the Long Halloween, actually was, who the murderer was, and how it brought back, like, you know, bad memories, right? And so here we are, it's Halloween, and the next thing you wind up seeing is Commissioner Gordon's son goes missing, right? And they're all panicked and they don't know what to do, and there's also murders happening that is a copycat from the murderer from the first story, right? And they're trying to figure out who that could be, and we wind up seeing a couple other villains losing their lives in the story as well. You see Robin in this book, which I think is Tim Drake, if I had to, or I'm sorry, not Tim Drake, Dick Grayson, if I had to take a guess, because James Gordon is very young, Barbara Gordon's very young at this point, so I would think it's Dick Grayson. So he's working with Batman, and you get to see that their relationship is uneasy. Like, Batman is very protective. The artwork was solid in this book, so I think that this book was very much worthy. It definitely left you with a great cliffhanger with Two-Face. We wound up getting to see Falcone in this issue, which is the son of Falcone. And so, yeah, just overall fun story to read. It definitely sets up a good mystery, and I think that's what made the first one so good, one of the best Batman stories ever. So like I said, guys, I'm definitely going to go out there and buy the original and read it. So if I had to grade this comic book, I'm going to give this one a solid A. I really enjoyed it. Very curious to see the direction that this comic goes and who this copycat murderer actually is. So there you have it, guys. There are my thoughts on the newest issue 1s, a few issue 2s, and of course, Amazing Spider-Man. If you liked it, like I said, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, do all that great stuff. I always will have more content right here for you to click on. Of course, guys, support the local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting, but always remember, read your comics so we can have great comic conversation just like this one here today. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you real soon.